Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this image. As you may have already realized, this picture is made out of separate elements. The bottle, the spanner as a subject, and also a displacement map to transfer the distortion in the glass of the bottle to the subject. By using this technique, you can make any subject take on the appearance of being on the inside of the bottle behind the glass. Okay, so on this table here I have some of the elements that I've used to make the picture. Notably the bottle. This isn't a particularly high quality bottle and I've picked this on purpose because it's simply pressed out of some glass and has quite a lot of distortion within it. Then I'm going to use this spanner as our subject. Obviously there's a bit of a scale difference here, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem and I should be able to sort that out in Photoshop. Okay, so what I'm going to do to start with is just use these couple of pieces of wood here just to raise the bottle off the surface of the table. I'm just going to cover those with this piece of black cloth, like that. So I basically make a black stand that I can put the bottle on. So just place that on there, like that. There you go. Okay, so with that in position, I can come forward to the camera. On the front of the camera there's a 24 to 70mm zoom lens at the 70mm end, and on the top of the camera I have this flash sync trigger. This is also capable of controlling the studio flashes. The camera itself is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to show the results. So as usual, the first thing to do would be just to take an image to see what the contamination, if any, I'm getting from the house lights. I recommend you do this if you're trying to do this at home or in a studio, just to make sure that you don't get any contamination from any other sources other than the flash that you want to use for the picture. Okay, so with no flash set, I will just grab an image. And there you go, you can see in here that we're getting reflections from the lights and we're getting quite an image of the bottle. So in order to make sure that these don't affect your picture, we just need to address the settings on the camera. So over here I have a shutter speed set of 1/30th of a second. Now because I'm going to be using Studio Flash, I can set that to the sync speed for that camera. So instead of it being a 30th of a second, that can be 1/250th of a second, like so. Also, the aperture that I've got here is f4. Now that's almost certainly going to be too narrow a depth of field. So in order to make the depth of field bigger, I'm going to make that aperture f8, like so. So with these new settings, I'll take another image. And there we go. You can see that in this image it's virtually disappeared. We're still getting a few highlights from the lights, but I don't think that will be too much of a problem. Okay, so with that experiment out of the way, it's time to set the first of the lights. Here we are. So this is a Profoto D2 Studio Flash, mains powered. This is 1000 joules, and on the front of that I have this softbox, which is a 1 foot by 4 foot softbox, and I've placed it in this position quite close to the bottle so that I end up making a highlight that will run down the edge of the bottle here. Now I don't know quite what the exposure is, so I'm just going to take a test exposure with an arbitrary energy set on the flash and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so this is the first of the results. And the first thing to notice about this is you can still see these highlights from the house lights, so we'll have to address that when we actually come to take the proper image. But you can also see that we've gained this highlight running down the edge of the bottle. The highlight on the other side is actually a reflection on the inside of the bottle of this one on this side of the bottle. But you can see that the edges of these, if I zoom in a little, just to make it a bit more obvious, the edges here are actually quite hard. There's no graduation to speak of. Now that's because the glass in the bottle is just reflecting from its point of view what it sees, and it sees this, which has quite sharp edges to it. So in order to make the graduation wrap around the bottle, what I need to do is make this quite soft, and the way to do that is to put a diffusion sheet in position here and then put this behind that. So I'll set that up now. There we go. So what I've done is just move the whole of this flash and the softbox further back a bit to make room to put this diffusion sheet in. So I'll just pull that down and get it in position. There we are. Something like that. Okay, so with that set, what I'll do now is just take another exposure and we'll see what that looks like. So that has had the desired effect. It's made this very much softer than it was before. I just go back to what we had before. This is what we've got now. It's also taken quite a lot of energy out of the light. One, because the light has been moved back slightly, and two, because the diffusion sheet here will actually take some of the energy out anyway. So what I'll do is just add maybe a stop of energy to that light. So that's increased the exposure, and as we can see, that's not doing too bad on the exposure front, but it's still not wrapping round enough for what I want. And also, if we just again zoom in, just at the top here on the neck of the bottle, you can see where the top of the sheet is. So in order to address those things, what I'm going to do is first of all raise this up even higher than it is now. That will mean that the reflection in the top of the bottle here will not catch the top of this sheet, hopefully. I'll just take that up there like that. I'll bring the bottom end back down, and also I'm going to try and move it in so that it's closer to the bottle. There, so with those adjustments made, I'll just take another picture. Yes, now that's better. Obviously I've got the edge of the sheet in this side, but that doesn't really matter because I'll crop that part of the picture out anyway. But the neck of the bottle here is looking a lot better than it did before. This is what we had before, and this is what we've got now. The only other thing is that this is actually wrapping round possibly a bit too much now. So to control the size of this graduation and its placement on the bottle, just need a bit of fine tuning to the actual position of this diffuser sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it back a little, and I'm also going to take it away from the subject so that the front edge is in a different position to where it was before. So let's just move this back a little, like that. And it's slightly squarer on now than it was before. So with that in the new position, we'll take another picture. There we are, that's becoming much more like what I want. If I go to the previous picture, you can see that it's wrapping around quite a large amount of the bottle, whereas here it's a bit more controlled. But it's still not graduating off quite as much as I'd like. So we just need a further fine tune of the position of this softbox, just to make the graduation fall off a bit quicker around the front of the bottle. And the way to do that is just to move it closer to the diffusion material. There we are. It seems to be getting into almost the right position. It just actually needs to go slightly further round the back of the bottle. So in order to do that, I just need to move this backwards relative to the subject so that it moves the highlight around the bottle a little. So fairly fine movements on this, like so. There we go, nearly there. I think it just needs to be just moved ever so slightly further round. So I'm just going to feather it this time, like so. So we end up with a sharper fall off on this side and less of a fall off on the other side. There we are, that's much better. So it's coming right up to the very edge of the bottle now, which is what I want. And if we just go back through where we started from, this was with no diffusion material at all. And then this was with the diffusion material very close in. And then finally, after some fine tuning, we've ended up with this result. So the final thing to do on this particular element of the picture will just be to turn the house lights out so that we get rid of these distractions in the glass here. And with the house lights out, I'll capture another image. So there we are. That's quite a good result, I think. We'll put a mark on that one. So with that captured, it's time to move on to the next element in this composite image. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are actually three elements altogether. One being the bottle, another one being the spanner, and the third one is the one that we're going to address next, which is the displacement map. And we need to take a picture which shows the distortion which is inherent in the glass of the bottle. Now in order to do that, we need to set up another light. So what I have here is another Profoto D2, and on the front of that I have a 2 foot by 2 foot softbox. Now I've placed this relatively close in, and the idea of this is so that I end up being able to illuminate this surface, and that will then show any of the distortion which is in the bottle, as long as I get the exposure right. Now in order to do this, I'm going to turn off this flash unit over here, and I'll turn this one on. So I'll just grab an image as a test. Now that is fairly obviously overexposed, so I'm just going to take 4 stops off that. Yes, now that's not too bad. What I'm actually looking for is a grey inside this bottle. And although it looks fairly uniform in here, in reality it isn't. And that detail can be brought out in post-production. There is, however, still a problem with the lighting for this image. Just at the bottom here you can see that the background doesn't go all the way down to the bottom of the glass in the bottle. Now that is due to this gap at the back here. So what we can do about that is quite easily just place a couple of mirrors just to reflect the light from the top of the softbox onto the bottom of the bottle, like so. So with those in place, we'll just take another image. And there you go, you can see that that has now got filled in quite nicely. So that's what we had before, and that's what we've got now. Okay, so that brings us to the final element in this composite, which will be the spanner. So what I'm going to do is remove this light and remove the bottle. In fact, I'm going to remove the whole desk. And what we're going to do is just set up this spanner so that it's in this sort of position in front of the camera. So here we are. This is now suspended in about the right position, probably. I'll need to set that up in the camera. So what I'm going to do now is turn this flash unit back on again, and we'll just take a test exposure just to see where we are. So that's not too bad. It's obviously far too big in the frame. So what I can do is just adjust the focal length of the lens. So I'll take it from 70 to around about 30. And also I need to just take the camera up slightly in the frame. I'll just give myself a little more room around. I'll just make that a little wider. There. Yeah, that's looking quite good. Okay, so with that set, we'll just take another image. Here we are, that's not too bad. Now I've been very careful not to do very much with the direction of this light, but with this diffusion sheet in the way, I think it is a little too soft. We need to give the subject, the thing that will be inside the bottle, a little bit of bite. So what I'm going to do is just remove this diffusion sheet. And with the diffusion sheet out of the way, I'm just going to move this light a little bit further round. Something like that. And we'll just give that another try. There we are, that's starting to get there. Although this edge of the subject here seems to have got a little lost. So what I'm going to do is just add a bit of recycled light into that. So just with this piece of card, I'll just hold that into position and we'll just take another image. There we are, that's much better. And if this was on the inside of a bottle, there would be internal reflection. So it's not going to look too out of place. So that's it for actually grabbing the images. The next thing to do would be to go into Photoshop and do the post-production. So here we are in Photoshop, and these are the three files that we captured. So this is the bottle. Then this I'm going to use as the displacement map. And this is the subject, our spanner. Okay, so I'm actually going to start with the displacement map, this image here. So what I'm going to do is just make a copy of that. So I'm just going to right click on the layer and just come down to duplicate layer here. And this time I'm going to ask Photoshop to make me a new document. I'm just going to call that displacement. Now what that has done is made a new file at the top here as a copy of that layer. Now, I've done it this way because I'm going to change some of the attributes of this file. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Image and go to Mode, and I'm going to change it from a color image to a grayscale image. Like so. And then I'm also going to change the mode from 16-bit to 8-bit. And you need to do that so that when you come to apply the displacement to the image, Photoshop can handle it properly. So with those two things done, the next thing to do is just have a look at the image and see if we can bring out a bit more of the detail. So I'm going to again go to Image, go to Adjustments, and come down to Levels. So just using the sliders, I'm just going to re-establish the white point and a new black point. Now, as I bring this in, you can see that the inside of the bottle here is no longer just a bland white. It has some details going on in it. So we'll just adjust that up just to get the amount of detail that we can. Something like that. What you should be aiming for is something which is grey, doesn't have any pure white and doesn't have any pure black in the area of interest. And our area of interest is the inside of this bottle. So with that done, I'm just going to click on OK. Now there are a few artifacts, like we left the lights on, for instance, and there's all sorts of dust spots and things in here. None of that really matters because the next thing that I'm going to do is just apply a Gaussian Blur to that. So I'm going to go to Filter, come down to Blur and Gaussian Blur. And the level of blur really depends on the quality of detail in your subject, not the quality of detail in the displacement map. So I'm just going to pick a value somewhere around here and click on OK. So with those things now done, I'm going to file this away on the computer. So File, Save, and we're going to call it Displacement. I'm going to put it in the file with the rest of the bits of this image, like that. OK. So now we have the displacement map done, we can go back to the bottle, our starting point. So the idea of the image was to put the spanner in the bottle. So here's the bottle and here's the spanner. So what I'm going to do now is just select just the spanner, like so. And with that spanner selected, I'm just going to copy that part, go back to my bottle, edit, and paste. There we are. So that has pasted our spanner in front of the bottle. Now we still have the cable holding up the spanner at the top here, so that needs to be addressed to start with. So making sure that we're on this layer, I'll just zoom in to the top part, like so, and I'll just clone out this part of the cable. So picking a fairly small clone tool, hold down the Alt key to get your target, and then just very carefully go in there and clone that bit out. There we are, and the bit on the top as well. Now on the other side, it's even easier because all you need to do is just pick a black paintbrush, so make sure the foreground colour is black. I've got a fairly small paintbrush here, we'll just see what that's like. That's going okay, and so we'll just paint those bits out. That, and paint that bit out like that too, and just the bit that's on the inside there, like that. There we go. Right, so now we can just zoom back out again, and now I want to position the spanner within the bottle. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is just change the blending mode here. So I'll just go down and we'll have a look and see which one looks right. They all look slightly different. I'm quite liking lighter colour. Again, this will depend on the colours and the textures within your own subject. So I think for this particular spanner and this particular bottle, I'm going to go for lighter colour. OK. So now it just needs to be resized so it fits in the bottle properly. So again, just make sure that you're on the same layer. Go to Edit. And I'm just going to start by going to Free Transform and making sure that the width and the height are actually locked together, I'm just going to grab one of the handles here and just resize it. I'm going to hold down the Alt key at the same time so it resizes from the center. So that's about there. Then I'm going to just change the point where it's going to resize from. We'll just do that again. And possibly just come down a bit more. Like that. Move the whole spanner down. So we'll just click on OK for that for the time being. Just go to Edit, Transform and Perspective. I'm just going to grab one of these corner points and just move the bottom of the spanner a bit further towards the front of the glass, just so it's like that. There, that looks okay, so I'll click on OK. Now that's looking all right, but it's not picked up any of the distortion because we haven't applied our displacement map yet. So that's the next thing to do. So just go to Filter, go to Distort and Displace. Now the horizontal and vertical scale numbers here are arbitrary numbers which apply the displacement map in the algorithm. So it's best just to play with these until you come to something which is reasonable. So I think if I just change both of those to 20, that should give me the result that I want. I'll just click on OK. It'll ask me for the file that we made earlier, which is this one. So we'll just open that. And there. So that's now displaced the spanner to add the distortion of going through the glass. You can see on this bit here, where in the neck of the bottle it's got all distorted, and just at the bottom here it's all distorted as well. So far so good. Okay, so just to make sure that this bit at the bottom here is a little more visible than it is now, what I'm going to do is just grab that layer and I'm just going to duplicate it like so. I'm just going to change the blending mode on that particular layer to screen, and that's just filled in all the areas that were maybe a little dark before. So I'll just take that down ever so slightly because I think it's a little over the top as it is. There we are, somewhere around there. So with those little fine adjustments all made now, that is basically it. And that becomes quite a believable image of a spanner in a bottle. So just to finish it off, I would go for a crop. So if we crop this down to probably a 1:1, a square format, something like that, and just click on OK. I think that makes quite a reasonable piece of artwork. And the technique employed in this can be applied to any subject and anything with any distortion in it. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I made that image. And if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.